Hello, and welcome to Wands and Fronds, the weekly podcast where we cover magic, herbalism, and more. I'm Nick,
And I'm Shannon.
and we are your co hosts as always. Today, I am talking about demons, very spooky, and Jezebel for kind of a topical topic.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I'm on that like kind of spooky note talking about hemlock. Dun dun dun.
Mm.
It's
So,
vicious.
so yeah, we're talking about poison, we're talking about demons, we're talking about the painted horror of Babylon. This is a good episode. This is a good episode, y'all. It might
Yeah,
be a little
I think it's fun.
but before we get into all of that juicy stuff, when did you feel the magic this week?
Oh my God. So I have like two. So first, I have been like collecting eggshells and like making eggshell powder because I wanted to like re up my magical protection. I've been talking about doing this, but this was like a longer process because I wanted to just like get the eggs as I was using them. So I finally like had enough egg powder that I was like, okay, this is enough. So yesterday I mixed the egg powder, nettles, and then some like chamomile and lavender for like, protection, but also drawing prosperity. Cause I'm always a little wary of protection magic that's like too, I don't know, that's too extreme because I don't want to block everything out of the home. So that's why I included a couple of herbs to like invite stuff in. So, I put some under my doormats, but then I also lined my outdoor windowsills and it's just so pretty. And I felt so magical yesterday, just like sprinkling my little protection blend. But I've also been wanting to start making salves. That's been like my magic herbal witchiness that I've been really excited to try. And I finally did it yesterday. So I made this all-purpose salve that it's like it is a almond oil infused with rosemary, calendula, lavender, yarrow, and chamomile. And then I added some shea butter into it. And then of course did like the mix with the beeswax. So this is like my super reused Trader Joe's tin. I have some prettier ones, but the salve is like beautiful. It smells super good. And if I end up liking the way it works, maybe I'll sell it at some point. But I originally did it because Eric gets like heat rashes during the summer, like a lot of people do, right? Like anyone with sensitive skin is like, hi, heat rash season, myself included. So I wanted to do something with like the calendula, the chamomile, and the yarrow for that. But then I had a lot of rosemary oil already. And I was like, well, rosemary is antibacterial and antifungal. So in the event that like the heat rash has some sort of rooting there, I was like, that'll be great. Plus, lavender is also really soothing and can sometimes help with itching. So, like for bug bites and stuff. Anyway, so that was my like fun potion brewing yesterday. I made salves.
I was just gonna say, I feel like I need a gallon of that because, and this is like some fun TMI for all the listeners out there. But you can absolutely see where my backpack rests.
Oh,
Um, just in general, like rashiness, ashiness, and yeah, it's not good. It's
well,
not
I'll
good.
save a tub of it for you. I've got like a
I'm
bunch of little
so excited
containers.
that I'm gonna see you in like a
I
month.
know. So I'll save one for you. It feels really good. The almond oil and the shea butter in it is like so moisturizing. So if anyone gets a sunburn, I am like 2 days post a really bad sunburn, which you can barely tell because fresh aloe and then topping it with like raw, unrefined shea butter has transformed my sunburn into a tan in 2 days. And I'm like
That's that's
super pale.
that's Incredina Aguilera.
Yeah. So there's some like hot herbalist tip for you guys. Anyway, so I've been feeling very like planty this week. I've been like really getting into like my plants and my brews. So it's been fun.
I have one that really sticks out to me from this week, which was that I was on the patio of my local bar. And so I'm friends with a snake. I guess long story short, I am friends with a snake because I have seen this snake multiple times, and I know where she lives. And I just had this moment though, because like the person I was with was like freaking out because this snake was there. And I was just like, I'm so calm right now. Like I
It's
don't
just it's like it's a garden snake. They're not evil.
and she's just chilling. Like she lives under the air conditioning thing, and she's probably got her little clutch of eggs under there, and she's just like literally hanging out.
She's just living her life, man.
Um, but yeah, it's like I've seen her a lot, and just like seeing this other person like freak out about a very innocuous nature thing. I was like, oh yeah, I'm plugged in. I'm tuned in.
I love
And
that. I'm
you're not.
and I'm sorry, I
So
realized I assumed it was a garden snake, but my guess would be if it was poisonous, you would be worried about
I
it.
would absolutely be worried. I mean, everyone knows I live in Texas, so that's not unheard of here. Actually,
No.
I will say the only poisonous snakes I've ever seen in person have been water snakes. So like water
Uh,
moccasins, copperheads.
yeah, I mean, I think so because of where I grew up, we definitely had a copperhead get into the house, but there was like that creek down out back.
Yeah,
So
they love water. They love
they love
water. I
water. Water moccasins, a big thing. But cottonmouths and copperheads are probably the ones I've seen the most of for sure.
But yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I've seen a copperhead, but it was swimming. They love to swim.
I mean, I saw a rattlesnake at Rattlesnake Roundup in Weatherford when I was a kid because they have this like big rattlesnake festival where you can go and like eat rattlesnake and watch people like, I don't know, do cowboy shit with them, like wrangling. It's so funny. Texas is weird.
Texas is weird. But yeah, it was a garter snake. It was a garter snake.
Okay,
So
they're so cute. I love a little snake. Also, I'm here for being friends with reptiles because I think I've talked about lizard before, but I have a lizard that like lives near my house that I adore.
and yeah, and we love that.
We're
We
just
love that.
living our spooky Snow White realness over
Yeah,
here.
spooky Snow White very much was the vibe. Yeah, because it was like, yeah, this is that's my friend the snake. Like
That's Winona. Be nice to Winona.
she's been here. She's been here the whole time.
We're
Like
at her house.
yeah, we're at her house. Like I'm sitting at this table on purpose because I like to watch the snakes. Like
Yeah. Oh,
anywho,
well,
speaking of being friends with snakes, how's that for a segue, right?
that was a good segue. I'm
That's a
like,
good
wow, it's
segue.
almost like we've been doing this for over a year, like coming up on 2 years.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're this podcast is old. But okay, so this week I am a happy little clam because I get to cover not just one, but two topics that are absolutely going to be making Christians uncomfortable.
In Christo-fascist America, we're here for that.
In yes, in Christofascist America, we're not here for it. But okay, so in both cases, we're going to talk about how Christians are very dumb and very wrong. So
Wow.
if you're a Bible thumper and you're somehow listening to Wands and Franz podcast, just a warning up top that this episode is not for you. Y'all have ruined this world, not even just this country, but like the whole world. And you've poisoned our well of spirituality with your patriarchal nonsense.
Hot takes.
Hot takes, but truly, fuck Christians. But I'm talking about demons today.
Ah,
Um,
woo! Demons, demons, demons.
and in order to talk about demons, it has to be in the Christian context because witches don't really believe in demons. Which so the official Wiccan stance on demons is that witches recognize spirits, but don't really see the point in trying to categorize something like that into like angels and demons, and just kind of recognize that there are spiritual energies that are beyond human comprehension in large part, and most of that is neither good nor bad. It's,
Yeah. I like that. I feel like that's I mean, even though I'm obviously not a Wiccan and you're not either, I feel like that's like a really good way to explain how I feel about it. Where it's like, I believe in spirits. Some love to make chaos and some are much more like happy and want to talk to you. But it's like to say that one category is all good and one is all bad is weird. And like, what is it with the binary Christians? Calm down.
They love a binary. They do. They love a binary. But so here's the thing. I think a lot of people I might even be wondering what exactly a demon is. And, to all of you, you're not alone. Um, the very smart cunts at Christianity and Company also seem to have a vague idea themselves. So even though this is like their traditional monster under the bed, they don't really have like great explanations for what a demon is. But when I think of demons, I think of like little devil guys with like horns and maybe a pitchfork, just like, when you look at the paintings, like Dante's Inferno. I know there's like paintings of Dante's Inferno, but it's just like the little guys that are like pushing you into like the fire pit,
Yeah, the ones that are like poking you in the butt with their little
Yeah.
pitchforks.
Yeah.
It also makes me think of I do love the demon from oh my gosh, the Matt Groening show.
Oh, Disenchanted.
Yes, Disenchanted. You,
Lucy.
The character Lucy is you.
Yeah. And that tracks. That tracks. Absolutely. Also voiced by John DiMaggio, aka
So
Bender, my other favorite character from a Matt Groening show. So
we're here.
Anywho, hi. But actually, right? We're thinking like Satan, like satanic imagery when we think about a demon. But actually, the Satan thing brings up a very good point, which is nowhere in the actual text of the Bible is Satan described as being like this horned goat man or anything like that. It's one of those things like the rapture that seemingly everyone thinks the devil is like a horny goat man, like a Capricorn man. But it's not in the Bible. It's like the rapture is not in the Bible, but everyone talks about it.
I do love in the show Lucifer, if anyone's watched it, there is this scene where it like becomes a bit of a running joke that one of his brothers, who's an angel, made up the goat thing to fuck with him. And he's like, oh, he hates the goat thing. And that always tickled me.
But really though, it's like it's not anywhere in the Bible. It's not written down. And like actually Lucifer is described as being the most beautiful of God's angels. Like Lucifer means like the light bringer, and sometimes it means the morning star,
aka Venus.
Yeah. So we're talking like the most beautiful angel there ever was. And
Tom Ellis was a great cast for Lucifer.
Oh yeah. And since Lucifer is canonically an angel, a seraphim, which is like the top tier of angels, and then all of his followers who followed him out of heaven are also canonical biblical angels,
the party angels.
So in order to get a handle on what a demon might be like, we have to think about biblically accurate angels, which is like the be not afraid meme. Where it's just like a million eyes, maybe like a bunch of wings, maybe a hovering fetus. I don't know if y'all have seen that one.
Some tentacles.
Yeah.
And I do think it's like a good reminder here too that it's like Christianity didn't invent angels, which is why actual angels would be dope.
Right. But biblically accurate angels are terrifying. And the reason for that is that they do not have a form. All right. The whole thing about being like a ball of eyeballs is that they're trying to take a corporeal form to communicate with a human. So this form is just something random that they've thrown together.
I love the idea of a demon just being like, this is what humans do, right? 8,000 eyeballs.
Yeah.
This is what you look like. That's what y'all look like.
Be not afraid. be afraid. I'm just a giant ball of eyes. That's normal and fine. Like that's what you are, right?
Yeah, that's what
Uh,
humans are.
that's what humans are. I thought you would. I thought it would make you more at ease if you were like.
This is for your comfort, people.
um, but okay, so they're unknowable to mortals, and their forms are temporary, which is important because they're not floating around being a terrifying ball of eyes all the time. Most of the
Yeah.
time, they're probably just like a ball of light or something, um, or something like that. Who cares?
Yeah. It's not the most interesting thing about them.
Yeah. Um, but I think this is a good spot for demon fact. Fun fact number one: the Old Testament actually contains zero mentions of demons. So they do give
Wow.
you the backstory of Lucifer and Hell. That's it, and they don't even use the word demon in that story. Um, because Satan's not a demon. Satan is a fallen angel. So demons are angels. They're the same
Yeah.
species for
Satan
sure.
is Tom Ellis as a detective in Los Angeles.
But okay, so we can actually kind of see when demons really take hold in the lore, though, because in the New Testament, there's a shit ton of demons. There's like 50 mentions of demons in the book of Revelation alone. There's more than that throughout the whole New Testament. They love demons. They love demons in the New Testament. And so, yeah, we kind of have this like reasonable timeline for when, Old Testament didn't give a shit about demons. Okay. No one cares, right? We're not going to talk about that. New Testament, they're obsessed. So it's like, obviously, they like need this bad guy. They need a villains. They got to keep the people in line. But yeah, but who would have known that the Jewish mystic death cult would have such kooky ideas about spirituality? And let's get into that a bit. So the Greek word for daemon, really just means spirit. So, and it's a good place to dig into the history. So for literal centuries, people felt very little need to separate out earthly spirits into like good and evil teams. They kind of viewed these entities as individuals with sort of their own sense of agency. And so they have their own priorities, they have their own goals, even. And if they help you, it's because they're probably helping you help themselves achieve some goal that they personally have. It's like they don't give a shit about humans. I mean, can you imagine being like an immortal being, like heavily involved in the important matters of the universe and good versus evil and like giving a shit about a human, like a single human?
Yeah, I mean, that's not to shit on goldfish, but, like, that would be like taking a very important personal interest in a single goldfish. Like, sure, you might toss them some food sometime, but I'm like, most people aren't fucking communing with this, like, lesser, quote, unquote, "creature" that doesn't, have bills to pay or, like,
Right.
work to do. I'm like, we're like shitty goldfish in
Yeah,
the
we're
cosmic universe.
I mean, really though, like even less than, I would say an ant. It's like really, it's like, why would a demon be interested in you? I really don't know.
Yeah, it's like,
Some people are very delusional about their own importance, which is
ask
something.
not what demons can do for you.
Mhm.
Ask what you can do for demons.
Right, right, right. But yeah, so some of these spirits were beneficial, some of them were malefic. That could change on a whim, which is the cool thing about being an individual. You're allowed to change your mind. Um, but the distinction simply was not made. So angels, demons, ghosts, sprites, even jinn, all kind of fall under this umbrella of just being spirits. And that's fine and cool, even. Um, and actually, a lot of like the imagery of demons comes from genies. Like a lot of it does. A lot of it does. And yeah, so we're talking about demons, and they're these unknowable spirits from another realm. And a lot of the flavor that we're getting is coming from genies and from Christians needing villains, again, to keep their people in line. Um, and actually, it could not be more obvious that the original Christian demons are sort of these like, it's almost like satire in a way. It's like they're very obviously based on like Iranian spiritualities, which kind of brings in this like imagery of like genies and even like some of the spirits in sort of like a Near Eastern religion. So like
Yeah.
even like Mesopotamia, Phoenicia, like the demons of this like early Jewish mysticism were very, very obviously based on like the other religions in the area.
Yeah, that's where, and I think that's where you get into some like there's quite a bit of racism in making demons evil and some of the like imagery they're associated with.
Yeah, and I mean, even a lot of the demons, a lot of the artwork containing demons from like early Jewish mysticism, it's like very obviously based on even like Indian, like the
Yeah.
Indian pantheon of gods, because th- to them that was like so pagan, so foreign. Like there's just a whiff of racism.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and
like these lesser humans and they're
right, right,
like
right.
their version. Although to be fair, I'm like, you should be scared of Kali, you fucking patriarchal dickheads.
Yeah, you absolutely should. You absolutely should. Um, but all of that to say is that technically, like it canonically, demons are very mysterious, formless creatures, um, somewhat unknowable. And so I'm definitely not gonna sit here and sift through like a millennium of Christian theological history because I'd rather get into talking about some actual demons. But before I do, there are some key things that do appear in all of the demon stories and all of the lore that can maybe help us to kind of understand like what a demon is. Okay, so almost always there's an element of possession. Garden variety ghosts and sprites, etc., cannot do possessions. Um, that's a demonic power. Okay, so that's kind of like a really key difference between like a haunting and a demon is this possession. Like ghosts cannot possess. Um, Secondly, the summoning aspect. So, and this part really is copy and pasted from genie lore. Um, but you can summon demons and kind of ask them for assistance or make a deal. And here's the thing: demons are malicious. All right. So the deals are usually bad deals. Um, or trickstery deals. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like the crossroads demon, sell your soul for fame and fortune or whatever. But
Yeah. I mean, the devil went down to Georgia, you
yeah,
know?
truly. Um, but the summoning thing does bring up like a vocabulary lesson. Grimoire, which is such a fun word. So grimoire is a list of demons, their names, their aliases, their powers, summoning instructions, and suggested offerings. So it's like a little Pokedex. It's like a Pokedex of demons.
Oh my god, a Pokedex of demons. That just made me so happy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's what a grimoire is. And so, arguably, the most famous grimoire comes to us from King Solomon, his greater and lesser keys, which lists all of the known demons at the time and actually ranks them. And this includes some pretty famous names from the Inferno, like Beelzebub, the Prince of Demons, and Asmodeus, who is another prince of the demons. But also, for some reason, it's like so you have like these very, very demonic sounding names. Again, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, like demonic. But then there's also demons that are called like Amy and Alex.
I
Um,
love it. I also have to say, I love that in like the Keys of Solomon, some demons, like I know you're going to talk about like different powers, but I love how strangely specific it gets sometimes where it's like this demon commands 36 legions.
Yeah. No, because they really do. And as your guy Asmodeus has 32 legions.
See, Asmodeus would be lower ranking than a demon with 36 legions,
That's
most
true. That's
likely.
true. Well, there's 7 princes in hell, so
That's a lot of
they have
princes.
a pretty complicated system of
I mean,
government
I
in
thought that
hell.
like the dukes and earldoms and all of that was difficult, man. The Brits ain't got shit on hell.
Yeah, they have 7 princes in hell.
Wow.
And even like generals, and yeah, there's a lot. There's like a real hierarchy that they're very organized in hell, which
I'm
is
like, so again, bringing back that whole Capricorn
yeah,
imagery.
they're very organized. They're very well organized in hell. Um, but okay, all of that to say, the rest of this segment is a mini grimoire because I did want to talk about some specific demons, and there's hundreds of them out there. So like, I don't know, y'all clearly are not expecting me to like list every demon. So we're gonna hit some like high points here. Starting with Beelzebub. So cannot do this episode featuring Jezebel and Baal worship without talking about a demon based on Baal, again, because so many of the specific demons are very obviously based on the gods of the countries around Israel, like the pagan gods of the countries around Israel.
But you know, I'm gonna have to ask, does Beelzebub have a devil put aside for me?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
I
absolutely.
mean, you guys know you have to talk about Queen.
You do. You do. And Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me.
For
Okay.
me. Yeah.
But really, but Beelzebub is one of the 7 princes of hell, and some people say that Beelzebub is Lucifer. Some people don't.
Some people don't.
some some people don't say that. But some people say that he's just like a very very high ranking demon. So, yeah.
So like
Okay.
maybe he stands in for Lucifer when Lucifer needs a fucking self-care day.
He's the assistant manager of hell. Um, he's the assistant to the regional manager of hell.
I love this with like, yeah, like a weird corporate speak. It's like this
Uh,
is how you know capitalism is bad. Hell is set up in a corporate hierarchy.
hell is the corporate hierarchy. Of course it is. But one thing that is agreed upon is that Beelzebub is a demon that can fly, leading to one of his very cool nicknames, the Lord of the Flies. So, but
Sucks to your ass, Mar Piggy.
yeah, sucks to your ass, Marpiggy. But he's got some cool powers too. So he does like to cause destruction through tyrants, especially. So that's kind of cool. And I can think of some very demonic seeming people that are in charge of some very important things right now.
Yeah,
I
like all
mean,
the Supreme Court justices.
just like look in Amy Coney Barrett's eyes and tell me that there is not a demon possessing that woman.
I'm like Beelzebub is like the patron demon of the United States, I think.
I truly, truly, truly. But so he spreads destruction through the use of tyrants. He causes demon worship among mankind. He excites priests to lust. And he likes to cause political strife and wars. So yes, very American. And it is the 4th of July while we're recording. So
I have to say, like, fuck you, Catholic Church, for coming up with a reason that you're diddling children.
yeah.
That is not on
Yeah.
Beelzebub. That's on you fuckers.
It's cute. It's really cute that they were like, oh yeah, he like causes wars and you know, he makes tyrants and he makes the priests horny.
It's like almost like there's this really intense lack of accountability when you blame human failure on Satan and demons.
Yeah. Well, let's move on in our demonic dating game here. So we're going to talk about Asmodeus. So, like, people who are into demons all seem to be really into Asmodeus. He's also called Ashmodai, and he's another prince of hell. Again, there's 7 princes of hell. We're talking about just 2 today. But okay, so, and I've got a couple stories about Asmodeus, but just before I get into it, I just want to let everyone know that he breathes fire and rides a dragon. So a contender
So
for my favorite demon.
I was about to say, so he's an Aries.
So he's an Aries. That's right. That's right. One of his heads is a goat head. He has 3 heads.
Perfect.
One of them's a human head. One of them's a goat head. The other one I think is a bird head. And
Wow.
also, his penis, has a snake head.
Cute. He's
Yeah.
an Aries.
Oh yeah. And he's single, ladies. Okay, but but just let that soothing image wash over you. He's got 3 heads. One of them might be a bird head, but one of them for sure is a goat head, and one of them for sure is a human head. He has a snake for a penis. He breathes fire. He rides a dragon. Like, what a cool dude. A rock star.
He sounds like the ultimate fuckboy.
He sounds so hot, right?
Right? Like hot, but a dickhead.
So, okay, but here's the thing. Demons get crushes too. So cue Sarah. She's a gorgeous, gorgeous girly with a demon problem. So Asmodeus is obsessed with her. And so every time she gets close to being married, he kills the guys before they can consummate the marriage.
Wow, that's so romantic.
It really is. It really is. So she's engaged again. And it would be such a bad look on God's part to keep letting dudes get ripped apart by a horniness demon. So he sends the archangel Raphael to intervene. And the answer ends up being that Tobias, her new boo, are getting married as planned, right? But when it comes time to consummate the marriage, they have to burn this incense made of fish guts, specifically like the liver and bladder. And which does not seem like it would be a very romantic or sexy smell.
Yeah, I'm like, I might rather just not.
But Asmodeus was like straight up like ripping these dudes in half before they could consummate the marriage. So I do think the fishy odor in the honeymoon suite is maybe better than getting ripped in half bodily by a demon.
No, I was like, maybe better for the guy.
Maybe better for the guy. I might, yeah. And Sarah, it took, this isn't like her 2nd engagement. This is her 7th engagement. So 6 other dudes are just fucking dead.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is Sarah had a commitment problem. And let Asmodeus be the bad guy.
But okay, so Tobias and Sarah burn this like fishy fucking incense, and once the marriage is consummated, Asmodeus has no power anymore to like interfere, because now they're like married and it's consummated, and that means like God isn't protecting them. I don't know why. I thought God didn't like sex, truly, but apparently that's
I'm like, why? I don't know, man. I don't know that I want Christian God in my bed. Like, that sounds like a real bummer.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like a bit of a bummer. And so yeah, so he can no longer interfere, right? Asmodeus, though, he also has a very famous run-in with King Solomon. King Solomon, of course, tries to summon Asmodeus for help building the temple. The famous story with King Solomon is that he summoned a horde of demons to build the temple in Israel. But Asmodeus does not want to do manual labor because in hell he's a prince. Even though there's like 6 other princes, he's still one of them. Like, he doesn't have to do manual labor in hell.
It's like, you were gonna fuck up his manicure. What are you doing?
But he's like, so fuck you, mortal. How dare you summon me to do manual labor? Fuck right off. So he like yeets King Solomon out into the desert, and he's like so far away, it takes him months to get back to Jerusalem. In the meantime, Asmodeus shapeshifts into King Solomon and is fucking his wife, fucking his concubines, and like being like sitting on the throne, having, eating these elaborate and extravagant meals, and just being like the king. Like he's just shapeshifted into the king, and then the real King Solomon comes back and is like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
And it's like, well, this kind of sounds like a whoopsie on your part, Solomon.
Yeah, and like it's like you flew too close to the sun here. Like you're lucky you're not dead.
Yeah, it's like just stick with some of the regular demonic legions, dude.
Yeah, like what the hell? Literally. Okay, but so King Solomon's dumb. Asmodeus fucked his wife, and no remorse, no remorse. And do you think afterwards she was like, yeah, no, honey, you're doing such a good job at having sex with me, and I'm not thinking about the demon version of you at all.
The demon version of you that actually made me come. Because you know that a demon is gonna like be down to like go down on you and like
Oh
make
yeah,
sure you're pleasured and like giving you orgasms in a way that there is no way fucking Solomon was.
there's no way, and
You know he's a two pump chump. You know it.
I mean, there's no way, and an Israeli king, like the most orthodox Jewish man that there could possibly be. I'm sorry, but like Orthodox Judaism just is not a very sexy religion.
No. Also not a religion that's super fond of women having anything. So
Right, and we hate that for them. Um, but speaking of Asmodean horniness, there is a more recent story about Asmodeus. So this time from the 17th century in France. And hang on to your seats, people, because this one is kind of funny. So apparently Asmodeus did a group possession of an entire order of nuns and caused these Catholic nuns to become insatiable nymphomaniacs. So apparently the group exorcism involved lots of female masturbation, and apparently most of the nuns did try to fuck the priests that were doing the exorcisms.
wow.
But also they were fucking each other. They were like going out and like trying to fuck people in the village, and they were just like they were just so horny. These nuns were really horny.
Good for them.
Which ultimately does end up leading to a witch trial, because we love to do a witch trial,
Because God forbid women have fun.
because it's the 17th century, and you knew it was going to be a witch trial as soon as we started talking about exorcisms. And certainly some people died because the witch trials. Okay, like it's not so funny, but it was, like 400 years ago. So I think like time heals all wounds.
And makes a lot of them funny.
And it makes a lot of them funny. So sorry to the people who actually died during this witch hunt, but it is kind of funny. And the local people thought so too. So much so that some genius made it like a stage show. So they made like a play out of it. So you could have this whole sort of dinner theater experience of like watching these possessed nuns like flick the bean on stage and like fuck a priest.
Also, like, how fucking French is that?
Yeah. And ultimately the government shut it down for vulgarity. But it was a popular local attraction for a few years. This sort of stage show based on these possessed nuns. And that was Asmodeus. So yeah. And so before we move on, some of the lore says that Asmodeus is Lilith's husband.
So I bet he lets her be on top.
So they're like the king and queen of horniness.
Good for them.
Good for them. Which brings me to like a modern-ish demon. Zozo. So Zozo is known as the Ouija board demon.
Ruh-roh.
Uh, and he went viral in the year of our Lord 2009, giving Tumblr users everywhere a major case of the heebie-jeebies. But here's the actual crazy thing. All the demons I've been talking about so far appear not only in Solomon's Keys, but also this more modern grimoire from the early 1800s, which is Le Dictionnaire Infernal.
Mm.
But guess who else is there? Zozo,
Ooh.
the Ouija board demon. So this is not from the year 2009. It just sort of has resurfaced in 2009 on the internet. But here's the thing. Zozo loves to do possessions. And so that's why he seeks out people who are using Ouija boards to find his opportunity to do possessions. And so the viral story from 2009, basically the original poster was messing around with a Ouija board, and Zozo comes through and makes his intentions clearly known that he wants to do a possession. And so the guy's daughter almost drowns in the bath and then gets this like crazy and supposedly unexplainable infection, which is like a blood infection, which doesn't have to do with the drowning. So the incidents are separate, but it's around the same time. But then also his wife has like a full mental breakdown and is described as having like a completely new personality afterwards. And obviously like not in a positive way, you know, like she didn't learn how to like do French patisserie or something like that. Like she's just like really mean and like really depressed and possessed even.
Yeah.
And
A right bummer.
so here's the thing. Here's the thing. This is why if you're gonna mess with the Ouija board, you close the portal at the end. You don't just leave it open. That's the moral of the story from 2009 with Zozo, is that if you're gonna fuck around with the Ouija board, you hang up at the end by moving the planchette. It's very easy to do. So I'm just going to tell you how you move the planchette to goodbye, and that's like the Ouija board equivalent of hanging up the phone. Because if you leave the portal open, that's how you get possessed by Zozo, the Ouija board demon.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, my little Whitman sampler of demons. What I will say is that in doing my research for this segment, I did listen to a lot of podcasts about people who work with demons. Not my thing personally, because it really does sort of imply this belief in Christianity, which I do not possess. So
no, it also feels like kind of rude to spirits. Like it feels disrespectful to tell a spirit you're a bad guy. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm not about to fucking like get some sass on with creatures of the universe. Like, no.
But I did want to talk though about some of my favorite like fictional depictions of demons. I don't. Do you ever read the Bartimaeus trilogy?
No, we've talked about that. I haven't though.
So in the Bartimaeus trilogy, basically it's sort of like a revisionist history, but in that history, the British government is all magicians.
That's
and
fun.
the thing in that is that the demons are always trying to like kill the magicians or like find loopholes in the deal, and like the magicians have to try very, very, very hard to like keep the demons controlled.
I mean,
And
I feel like you gotta plug Good Omens for demon representations.
Oh, sure. But I just meant like the spirit of it, where it's kind of like, you know, you shouldn't disrespect an immortal deity.
No, you absolutely shouldn't.
But also, like the idea in that is that these magicians, you know, have this incredible hubris of like, I'm gonna summon like a Ptolemaic demon to clean my house. And then the demon's like, I'm gonna rip your fucking head off.
Yeah, and fair.
And fair. Um,
Yeah, I think so. Good Omens is one of my favorite like literary representations of demons. I also really like the demons in the Juliet Blackwell like witchy mystery series, but mostly like recently I really love some of the demons represented in the television show Lucifer. They're very interesting. There's some good, I feel like there's really good pop culture demons.
there are, I mean, obviously Lucy, um, but yeah, I mean, demons, it's a really broad topic. And truly, I don't just want to spend all day talking about it because kind of the thing is it's just like really not an area of the craft that either of us is like super dabbled into. But I do
Not.
think it's interesting. But I think the last thing I'm going to say is that I did have to listen to a lot of podcasts about people who work with demons. And I've read a lot of stuff written by people who work with demons. And on one hand, I kind of get it because it is like the antithesis of Christianity in a way. And like, I do see the appeal of that as someone who was raised by Christians, like to kind of rebel against it. But like, that's just not my spirituality.
Yeah, it feels to me sometimes a bit like Satanism, where it's like a lot more about the show than the
And
practice.
actually, I did kind of like this thing that I was reading about Aleister Crowley, who invokes this demon a lot that's like the demon of the void. And it's but the whole thing around it is that it's really kind of like this metaphor for shadow work.
I love that. I do
And
like that.
and so kind of the quote that really caught me, and I'm probably like misquoting, but basically he was like, does it matter if the demon's real if you're doing the work?
And the answer in witchcraft is no.
The answer in witchcraft, yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Because if you're doing the work, that's good.
You're doing the
So
work.
you're doing the work. All right. Well, I'm excited to hear about poison. Like I love that this is kind of a direction that we're going in.
I do too. I think that this is an interesting like sort of I guess like a rabbit trail off of herbalism, because obviously most people aren't using poisons regularly in their practice. At least I hope you're not, because danger, Will Robinson. But hemlock is one of those plants that I think just has such strong historical association with witches, right? So it was interesting to dig into it a bit, but it does have some fabulous common names, including womblick, beaver poison, poison parsley, bunk, haber, devil's flower, break your mother's heart, lady's lace, scabby hands, and more. But scabby hands, I think, is my favorite.
um yeah. So I mean, does it will it give you like a scabby rash on your hands?
Oh, it'll fuck you up.
Okay,
So,
cool. I mean, tell me more.
yeah. So, up top, I'm just going to say, y'all, I'm not talking about growing hemlock today. Every part of the plant is poisonous, and literally as few as 6 leaves can kill you dead, full on dead. And there have even been instances of like children dying from making whistles out of the hollow stems. They're very poisonous. And in the US, water hemlock, which we'll talk a little bit about the cicuta species later, but it's considered highly invasive, and it also kills animals because it does look and smell a lot like wild parsley, and it will kill things that eat it, including poor animals and some creatures in the wild that can eat it without immediately dying will eat it enough that it'll actually end up causing like congenital birth defects in their offspring, and it can even be passed to humans through like bird and cow consumption and stuff. So it's like we're not talking about how to grow this.
So like so it can poison the whole food chain.
The whole chain, top to bottom.
That
So,
sounds really really not good.
no. But we'll talk about why I find that so interesting in a bit. But in the spirit of just like not being irresponsible, we're not going to talk about growing it. It's also again, the North American version is considered highly invasive and problematic. So like even beyond it killing you dead, growing it's not a good reason for
But
several reasons. So the hemlock plants are all in the Apiaceae family.
Actually, I do just want to jump in here and say that this is kind of one of those things that I think is like a perfect metaphor for gun rights, where it's like if your hobby is having a bunch of stuff around that could kill other people, I don't care. Find another hobby.
Yeah, get a new hobby. So, so um, anyway, so the hemlock plants, the Apiaceae family is also sometimes called umbelliferae. So basically the carrot family, right? So the family has two names, but they're referring to the same grouping of plants. Like umbelliferae, I don't know why that one's so hard, is basically referring to the umbels or the umbrella like flowers. There is also a tree, it's a deciduous tree referred to as hemlock because when you crush the needles, it gives off like a similar scent to that like characteristic wild parsley kind of funk that you get. But we're not talking about the tree today, folks. So when you're looking at historical hemlock, you're most likely talking about or reading about the species Conium maculatum. And the name, the conium, comes from Greek conus, which is like to whirl or to spin. And it can make you super dizzy when consumed. So again, don't. But when you rub it on your skin, it's also alleged that it can give you the sensation of like flying through the air, hence the use in like flying ointments in medieval Europe. There's also, though, a related genus, and this one is native to North America, called Cicuta. So the two genera, Conium and Cicuta, were distinguished from each other around like 1500, and they look very, very similar. Like there's a reason they weren't initially distinguished from each other. So I'm going to give you the description of the one in the US of Cicuta because that's the one that like most of our listeners are still in the US, so you want to be on the lookout for it. But it's a perennial herbaceous plant. It can get up to 8 feet tall. So hemlock can get very big. And it has these small little green or white flowers that are arranged in like an umbrella shape. So like think about carrot flowers, parsley flowers for reference. They grow in wet meadows along stream banks and in other marshy areas. So this is where like water hemlock, that name comes from. And the stem is branching and hollow. And sometimes on both the Cicuta and the Conium, sometimes it'll have telltale purple mottling on it, but not all of them have it. So that's not enough to like be able to distinguish it from wild carrots or parsnips. But the purple spots that show up in some species are actually called the mark of Cain, which feels appropriate. But the roots are like thick and multi-chambered. And when you crush them, they smell like raw parsnip. So like I love parsnip as much as the next person. It kind of stinks when it's raw. Like uncooked parsnip doesn't smell good. And that has the same.
I I disagree. I disagree. I kind of like the smell, but it's kind of one of those things. It's like sycamore because someone was telling me the other day that they hate the smell of sycamore trees, and I was like, I fucking love that smell. What do you mean?
But I wonder, Nick, if it's like there's a difference though in the smell between like the common culinary grown parsnip and wild parsnip.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I was just
Wild,
saying. It's like
but yeah, no, some people might like it. I think wild parsnip is a lot funkier and not a great way smelling. But again, if you're a forager, even the smell isn't gonna like be able to distinguish it from the wild parsnips. So
so.
like
This is not like an entry level forageable thing.
no, and that's why so many people you'll see say not to forage for wild carrots or wild parsnip unless you are like incredibly well experienced.
Like
The
you're like
main
you're God mode forager.
Yeah, the main difference is like the leaves on parsnips and like parsley and carrots tend to be rounded, but they're pointed on hemlock. But again, it's like that can also be a little misleading depending on the plant. So they do produce though these like cylindrical fruit. They're 4 to 6 millimeters long, and it spreads via like oodles of tiny seeds that each plant produces. And the leaves are lanceolate, serrate, and 2 to 4 inches long. So they can get pretty big. But water hemlock is actually considered the most poisonous plant in all of North America. So again, be careful. But an interesting thing about where it pops up is that hemlock tends to grow in areas that have been recently cleared. So it's like it loves marshy areas and like wet areas, but it'll also pop up in like parts of forests that have been recently like culled for lumber, or like new trails, or where roads are being put in. And so it kind of shows up in these like in between spaces, which is something you can see a lot in like plants that have historically been used for spiritual flight. They're like plants that'll show up kind of like in transitional spaces, which I think is interesting. So the cicuta varieties contain toxins, which set in within 15 minutes, and the consumption of them can cause seizures, hallucinations, brain swelling, delirium, and numbness. The bad news about the cicuta varieties, which are the ones in North America, is that there's like not an antidote. So you can initially treat it with charcoal, but really all they can do is provide supportive care. So things like anti-seizure medications. So like this is a thing where if you go to the hospital and you don't get there fast enough, you die. Like there's not a shot to fix that. The conium varieties contain coniine, which is similar in structure actually to nicotine, but it's a piperidine alkaloid that disrupts the activity of your central nervous system, your CNS. So it can cause like muscle weakness and eventually respiratory paralysis. And the ripe seed contains the most concentrated coniine, and it takes like a tiny amount to cause death. And the way it works is actually different than a lot of neurotoxins because number one, it doesn't cause like a lot of pain. So it was considered like a more humane execution method in the ancient world, but it works by ascending paralysis, which to me is like one of the scariest ones because it starts at like your feet and your lower extremities. And then the paralysis rises until eventually it hits your heart and your lungs, and then you suffocate to death. So there is also though like this connection to humane execution. There's this really great US based organization called Compassion and Choices, and it's about people that are advocating for the ability to have medical assisted death in people that are terminally ill. Their former name was the Hemlock Society, which I just think is interesting. But there's a lot of association with magical people, right? So, like a lot of poisonous herbs, it's associated with Hecate and Saturnus. Circe and Medea also were said to use it to kill male enemies because there's a strong association with like the destruction of male potency with this plant, which everyone knows nothing scarier than a limp dick. Am I right?
Oh no.
But we know from Plato that Socrates in 399 BC was sentenced to death because he was like an upper class like citizen. He was allowed to choose his method of execution, and so he chose to drink an infusion of hemlock to carry out his sentence, um because it's like easier, right? It's not going to cause a lot of pain. You will suffocate, but there were like pretty horrific ways to kill people in antiquity. And again, like we have to remember that everything we know about Socrates is because Plato wrote about him, sort of like Eric and I were just talking. It's like Jesus, right? Like we have no writings by this person, only their followers. Socrates didn't write anything. Plato wrote about Socrates, but his purported last words were, Credo, we owe a cock to Asclepius. Please don't forget to pay the debt, which I just love that idea. I think it's very romantic. So the ancient Sumerians, though, would use hemlock to bring about, or interestingly enough, also to end plagues and pestilence. And in Christian mythology, hemlock became poisonous after growing it on the hillside where Jesus was crucified. And when his blood touched the plant, it became toxic for the rest of time, which I guess is different than when you consume his blood, which protects you.
Which is good for you.
Which is good for you. So the decent news here is if you're someone that has a hankering to work with hemlock, the coniine, if you're using like the European variety, isn't stable. So the dried plant material actually loses its toxicity within a few days. Again, I'm not going to recommend working with it, but FYI, if it's something you're interested in, that would be the safest way to go about it, is getting dried coniine because it's the least likely to kill you. So magically, though, the plant's associated with the water element, of course, the planet Saturn. Historically, it's been used for things like astral travel, spells to destroy the sex drive, also freezing or paralysis spells, which can be very powerful. Some practitioners would also use it to consecrate magical tools. So historically, they would use the juice of the root and like rub it on their athame or their bowling. But again, don't do that. like that's poisonous. So modern practitioners, like in this great book, The Poison Path Herbal, recommend if you wanted to use it to consecrate things, like to use the dried conine leaves and make a water infusion like under the moon or something to do it with. But there's also a really great glyph for hemlock, and I'm showing the picture here for our Patreon, but people online, I'll find a place to post it. So I think though that like the glyph for hemlock could be really great to use magically, because to me I envision plants almost as like, like nature spirits, almost like elementals, where even if you're not with the plant, you can still work with like the energies of a plant. I think, of course, the tie is easier and stronger if you're there IRL, but I don't think there's anything wrong with like using a hemlock glyph magically, because again, that symbolism is really powerful. And I love the idea of maybe doing like some sort of like freezing spell and like putting the hemlock glyph on the outside of the container you freeze, or even like paralysis candle magic, like a cinnamon candle with this glyph on there to like make any shit they talk about you burn in their mouth and freeze them out of your life, Uh specifically you could do a freezer spell for, the Supreme Court using the hemlock glyph. And I just like have to say, if people are interested, let me know. But I love the idea of putting together like a group ritual around like paralysis for the Supreme Court on the Capricorn supermoon. Uh, Throwing that out there. So
I think this is an incredible idea.
yeah,
Because I've been I think we're like reading each other's minds.
well,
But
I
the mo-
often feel like that with you.
but I will also tell you that the most recent incense purchase that I made was cinnamon.
I mean, meant to be.
Meant to be.
So my sources today were The Poison Path Herbal by Kobe Michael. Again, this is a fantastic book. Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs. And I found this at Wikipedia, duh. And then I found this great article on Slate called Big Bad Botany, Hemlock, the Philosopher's Choice by Michael Largo that I thought was really cool.
Love that. Well, before we move on, I think it's time for asks.
I think it is time for asks. So, obviously, I just mentioned the idea of doing a group ritual on the Capricorn full moon. If you wanted to maybe get together and do something like that with us, joining our Patreon is the best way to have that like VIP Nick and Shannon access.
Oh yeah, Hundy P. And this is actually such a good time to join because we have some pretty cool upcoming stuff vis-a-vis my trip to LA and some stuff kind of around that. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not
No
going to tell you.
spoilers.
You're just going to have to go on Patreon and wait.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/Wands and Fronds pod. But if you just want to like email us and be like, you guys, you're so pretty. What's your address so I can send you a bag of rubies? Throwback
Oh
there.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You can email us at wandsandfrondspod@gmail.com, or you can message us on Instagram at wandsandfrondspod. You should totally be following us on Instagram. Nick is really into checking those messages on the bus.
I am really into checking them on the bus. I mean, because
It's a great time to do it.
I have like a 40-minute commute. And that's a lot of time to be on Instagram. That's like
It's
a
a good
month. That's
amount.
like a month on Instagram.
Yeah, you guys, you get a lot of access to Nicholas through the Instagram. But if you're like, okay, I've done all of this, how else can I support you? You could rate, review, and subscribe. 5 stars on Spotify or Apple. If you don't want to give us 5 stars, please don't fucking bother.
Yeah, don't even do it. Don't even
just
take the
don't.
time. Don't even take the
No.
time.
But Nick, what could someone write if they needed an idea for a review?
I'm really just spitballing here, but like one thing that would be good is if you put this podcast is good.
Love it. Simple, to the point, iconic.
And yeah, you could be like, Nick and Shannon are cool. This podcast is good if you wanted some flavor on there. But yeah, so leave us a little review, hit us up. Also, we love to hear feedback. So if like if you're one of those psycho demon people that I have been listening to for like 2 weeks now, getting ready for
Tell
this
us.
episode,
Tell us.
let us know. I'm actually hit us up. I want to get in a fight. I want to get in a public fight with the demon community.
Says our Aries co-host. We also like have anytime someone has asked us to cover something, it has been covered on the podcast. I'm just gonna like say that.
Like
We're
you could really take a more active role even.
we're here to serve,
We're
unlike
absolutely
demons,
we're absolutely here to serve. Unlike demons who are literally waiting for the first opportunity to tear your head from your shoulders,
which is fair. Ugh.
which is fair. But okay,
Anyway,
but okay, so speaking of demons, and speaking of the Supreme Court even, I feel like this topic could not be more timely. And this is also kind of like speaking of getting some feedback from people. I kind of had this idea though, this little brainwave of doing a segment where it's a queens of antiquity. So not necessarily deities, but sort of like cool historical figures, mostly ladies so far, mostly queens, but not necessarily all of them would be queens. But it's like the people who would have been like sort of heroes to our witchy ancestors. Because I mean, like let's be honest, most of us probably just come from regular people, but like, sort of historically, these are people that they might have looked up to, or like these stories are I like these folklore stories I think are so interesting that I have been fully caught up in them as like side research when I'm doing like the regular mythology topics. So, but also I really wanted to talk about Jezebel because I recently
yeah.
reread one of my very, very favorite books, Skinny Legs and All, which takes place in the early 90s, right before the Gulf War. And I had started reading it sort of when the Ukraine stuff was starting to stir up and be on the news here where I live. Um, just that kind of foreboding feeling that, World War III could be just around the corner. But in the book, it's sort of all about like Near Eastern philosophy, but it's also kind of about the apocalypse, and it's also kind of about Jezebel, um, the historical figure. So kind of hard to like put in a box, but the book is called Skinny Legs and All by Tom Robbins. It's fantastic. Although I will say it was written in the very early 90s by a man who did a lot of cocaine. So not the wokest piece of literature, but I points are made. Some very, very good points
I
are
mean,
made in the book.
look, Stephen King had a cocaine phase. A lot of your favorite authors did.
But all of that to say that that's why I wanted to talk about Jezebel. But also there's this thing where this somehow, even though we planned it out a while ago, it is just like very prescient to the times because Jezebel is really a story of vilifying women, which is something that is very much in the news right now. Because, I mean, and as expected, when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, you have all of these people coming out of the woodwork with all of this just misogyny. And it's like, we knew it was there. We knew it was there. But for it to jump out in the open like that is shocking.
Yeah, it
Absolutely shocking.
sucks. And like even some of the covert misogyny of the very quiet, like straight white dudes who have benefited from abortion, who are
Yeah.
just like, well, that's not the most important issue right now. It's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh,
Hmm.
interesting. But really the story uh kind of in the way it's set up in the book, or kind of the way he looks at it, is that and I I'm inclined to agree. This is my podcast segment, so obviously we're talking about what I think as a white man. Um, but no, but really, it's one of those things where like history has not been kind to Jezebel. But really, from the historical sources that we have, it doesn't seem like she was like what she's made to be, which is the painted whore of Babylon, right? And it's just insane. So it's one of those things where it's like they've latched on to poor Jezebel to make her almost like Lilith, to just be like women are evil, like worshiping nature is unnatural, and like somehow combining the two, because like really the story of Jezebel is like the story of Israel rejecting flat out any kind of pagan non-monotheistic belief and like choosing to be very very religiously orthodox as a nation. Okay, because it wasn't just the religion, I mean it was the whole society, like they.
Yeah. I mean, wow. That sounds strangely familiar.
Yes. So, but let's tell the story. Let's tell the story. So Jezebel. We're in the 9th century BC. Okay, this is 900 years before Jesus was even wearing pull-ups. All right, and we have Jezebel, who is by all accounts a very very intelligent woman. She's very well educated. She's a princess of Phoenicia. Her father is King Ethbal, sometimes Iqbal. I don't speak Phoenician, so sorry, y'all.
Wait,
Um,
our entire friendship is built on the cornerstone of you speaking Phoenician. I think the podcast is breaking up now. Okay, bye.
okay, well, that's all. That's all for today, you guys. Um, but no, so she is a princess from Phoenicia, and so it, which is part of former Mesopotamia. If you're formerly part of Mesopotamia, I
Nick has
love
a
that.
type.
I do have a type. I do. And so they worship a god called Baal, um, and a goddess who is basically Astarte, basically Ishtar. Basically, it's Ishtar. Because it's one of those things where it's like it's Ishtar, it's Astar, it's Astarte. I mean it's all Ishtar though. So, but Baal worship. Baal is like this fertility deity. Um, who's like, but it's kind of interesting to have like this male fertility deity though. Which is again Baal goes on to become Beelzebub. Um, so
Hmm.
and
Interesting.
a lot of the okay, so but part of that is like that a lot of the symbols for Baal were the winged bull, like a winged bull that would be sort of outside of the temples and like outside of palaces as protection. Because there's also this very protective element of Baal, but the wings and the horns are very devilish. They're depicted in a very devilish way. Um, and yes, so she's got but in Phoenicia, the kings are also the high priest. So that's part of it, right? So in where Jezebel was raised by King Ethbal, um, her dad is like literally the high priest of this cult of Baal worship, and she is raised in that to be a priestess in her own right. And so that's the thing. So as a woman, she's a priestess of the cult of Astarte, and the thing with that is it's a very very sexual kind of a cult. So a lot of the rituals do involve for fertility, obviously for fertility, but very very sexy things, very sexy things. So that's really the only thing that is kind of this that she's a whore. Now the thing is a lot of times priestesses back in the day would engage in this sort of like sacred prostitution to support the temple. And that's literally an ancient practice.
Yeah, I
And
mean, there's a reason they say sex work is the oldest profession.
yes, but I mean, my understanding of the situation though is that as the daughter of the king, she probably would not have been engaged in that. That's kind of more like ground level stuff. And she's kind of more of like a high priestess because she is a princess. So a bit disrespectful to just assume that she's a prostitute because I mean, truly, it just in like the hierarchy of this like temple, like she wouldn't be doing that. It's like she's kind of more of the pope or like a bishop. She's kind of more of like a bishop, if that makes sense. So fucking the people for money, that would be like what a priest would do. Just like a regular, like a vicar, like a
Yeah.
a preacher, even like just like a ground level, it's a front facing position, whereas Jezebel's a bit higher up, a bit more behind the scenes, a bit more on the political end of it even. So here's the and very political because she's again very well educated. So in her lifetime, Israel has crowned a new king, and this is the father of the future king Ahab. So Jezebel is married off to Ahab while he is still a prince. But then eventually Ahab becomes the king of Israel, right? And this kind of seals the deal for this kind of trade agreement. So here's the thing about Phoenicia, which if I didn't say, Phoenicia is basically Lebanon. So it is like north of Israel, but it's a very and especially at the time, like agriculturally rich country compared to Israel, which is mostly desert and was at the time mostly desert. But also had these thriving port communities of Tyre and Sidon. And that this is an important part of the deal with Jezebel getting married to Ahab because it opens up these port cities and kind of like completes this trade route that ultimately goes all the way to Greece. So it's good for Israel to kind of plug into this longer trade route that goes to Greece, which is ultimately connected to like the rest of the world through this little thing called like the Silk Road, like. But so it's a good opportunity for them, but culturally they could not be more different. See, you have this very cosmopolitan culture in Phoenicia, which is multicultural because they are allowing people from other parts of the world in, and they're not forcing them to convert to their faith. They're just kind of letting these other people practice their own faiths and practice their own culture and kind of like taking the bits that they want. And actually, that does kind of survive in modern day Lebanon, which has a very diverse cuisine, which is based on sort of lots and lots of different things. And they've kind of like just taken what they've wanted throughout history and kind of made this thing, which is uniquely Lebanese, but also has these influences from the other people that have been there. But Israel was very insulated. Israel was like, you cannot come here unless you're Jewish. And that was a big deal for them because it kind of cut them off from trade and also really created this very stagnant, very orthodox society that really just wanted to sit still and have everything be the same forever. And that's not how Phoenicia was. And so you have Jezebel coming to Israel, this super conservative country. And it's to seal the deal for this like trade agreement between the kingdoms. But ultimately, she's not happy to be a pawn. And she's like, yeah, I'm the queen of Israel. Like, I want to say in things. And the Bible never calls her the queen of Israel, by the way.
Which rude.
Like, literally, she was the queen of Israel. So take that, Bible guys. Um, so, but she's a strong, independent lady, okay, and she brings Baal and Astarte worship to Israel, and Ahab is open to it, and that's kind of the cool thing about Ahab. Like Ahab might low key be a woke king here because he's like, I'm not going to convert because I have these official duties as the king of Israel, like to the church, like the temple, like I can't just like go to your church, but like you can go. Like that's fine. Like you like we'll just go to church separately.
Yeah, which is like real woke for the time for sure.
And for being the king of Israel, like
Yeah.
a
Like,
like a true theocracy.
okay, okay.
So we're giving it to Ahab. And she's into it. So she builds her little temple, which the the patriarchy is mad. The patriarchy is mad that I mean it's like you not only did you let a woman speak to you, but you listened to her. And now you're letting her do things that she wants to do. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So they're pissed. They're pissed at King Ahab for letting it happen. But they're also for some reason pissed at Jezebel just for existing. Like, and she literally is not in any way like, I want to convert people in Israel to my religion. I just want to have a place where I can go and worship. And that's all she asks for. And that's really all she gets. So it's not the craziest thing in the world. But the patriarchy, and again, Israel is a theocracy. The patriarchy's mad. Okay. The prophets are mad. All right. The guys at the temple are fucking mad.
Again, because
And
God forbid a woman has a good time.
well, because you've allowed an idolater into the Holy Land.
Oh, America. Oh, I mean Israel.
And a painted whore at that. They love to call her a painted whore because she put on makeup one time.
Hot.
But okay, so here's what goes down. Here's what ultimately undoes all of the good work of Jezebel. But she did, here's the thing, it did catch on. So some people were into Baal worship and were into kind of their own Astartean cult, right? Like they were like, oh, that's kind of sexy.
Oh,
Like
wait, you mean that women aren't just inherently evil?
like Judaism is all about, oh, women need to dress modestly and be quiet and blah 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 blah. And it's like, wait, you could be kind of like hot and worship nature and like go to the beach and
Down. Sign me up.
sign me up. Sign me up. And Jezebel was like, yes, like we can have both. Like we can have an Israel that's more like my home country, where it's like we can do our thing and they can do their thing. And people will
She's
feel
yes-anding the promised land.
and she's like, and then like as far as this like trade deal goes, like people will be a lot more comfortable coming to Israel if we're like open.
Yeah.
And the patriarch was like, fuck this. This is so dangerous. Like, we cannot have this painted horror spreading around all of these like free love and ideas about like worshiping a goddess, a woman. So here's the thing. They get her on kind of like a real estate thing. Okay. And it's so basically there's this guy called Naboth, and he lives right next to the royal palace, and they need to expand their land. They're like, they're like built right up to the property line. And they are the king and queen. So they make like a very good and reasonable offer. And the guy's like, no, like this is my family's land, fuck you. And so Jezebel goes to this man called Naboth, which is easy to remember because he's Naboth and he's their neighbor. Okay.
Ooh, Naboth. Also, Naboth the knob,
Yeah, he's
honestly.
knob. But so they make him a good offer, and he's like, "Fuck you guys." Also, it's kind of a thing where he's like, "I could sell my land to you, but you worship like pagan deity is, and you're a whore, you're painted whore, and I'm not going to do it because the prophet told me not to do it. And
Yeah.
the prophet is this guy called Elijah, and he has this vendetta for some reason against Jezebel. Like he is the one that spearheads this whole.
I mean, speculation here, but that usually happens when someone's trying to fuck and doesn't get their way.
Oh, you're telling me like that's absolutely yeah. And the fact that like really the one thing that everyone has to say about Jezebel is that she's a whore because she put on makeup one time. But so Elijah is like egging on this real estate situation, right? And so Jezebel's like,
Elijah's like the McConnell of ancient Israel.
yeah. Um, so the real estate situation comes to a head because Jezebel, she's a strong, independent woman. Okay, Ahab is busy being the king or whatever. So she goes over and she's like, okay, well, you're blaspheming against God because the king is in charge of the church, and like you're blaspheming against your own God by following this prophet instead of the king. So first of all, you're a blasphemer, and second of all, you're committing treason because for king and country, you need to give up your land. And so she has him killed because she's the queen. She could do that. And she's like, I'm just sick of dealing with this situation. Like, we're not going to negotiate with you for this land anymore. Like,
Yeah, how many people have kings killed in the Bible?
yeah. And
A
then
fuck ton.
and then she remembers, oh shit, this is biblical times. Like, we could just kill him, and they do. So Elijah comes and is like, how dare you kill this like scrupulous and pious man, Naboth? God's coming for you. And so Elijah's like, you're gonna get torn up by dogs, and Ahab's gonna die, and your son is gonna die. And a guy called Jehu is gonna be the next king of Israel. And she's like, okay, crazy. Like, I'm just trying to put in a new driveway. Like, you guys are being so psycho. You guys are being so psycho about this whole thing.
It's like, oh my God, why are you guys obsessed with me?
And so here's what happens, though. Here's what happens. It kind of sucks because Ahab dies, right? Here's the thing. Jezebel becomes what they call a regent because she's going to be in charge until her son is like old enough and mature enough to like be the king.
Yeah.
Because again, she is the queen of Israel. The Bible doesn't say it, but that's
she is.
That's what happens when you're the only wife of the king of Israel. You are the queen of Israel. Like I'm sorry, but it's true. So she's the queen. She's the regent. She's the queen regent. Head bitch in charge. All right. So Jehu though, Elijah tracks down Jehu because of course he does. Of course he does. And he's like, my dude, you're gonna be the king. Congratulations. But you have to kill Jezebel's son and probably kill her as well. So so he kills the son, which now there's no heir to the throne. Which I think politically means Elijah, who is this prophet, gets to pick the next king, right? And he's already got his guy picked. It's Jehu, who I do think it's kind of, like he does make Jehu do the dirty work to be the king.
Well, yeah, because the prophet can't get his hands dirty.
Prophet cannot get his hands dirty, but the future king can. So he kills Jezebel's son, and then he's coming for Jezebel, right? And so this is where the makeup thing comes in. So Jehu is coming for her, and this is what it says in the Bible. It was that she put paint on her eyes. That's it. That's all it says.
It's an eyeshadow. It's called eyeshadow.
So she put on some eyeshadow, and for the rest of history was the biggest slut of all time because.
I mean, it's like growing up being told that wearing red lipstick meant you were a whore in the church.
Yeah. So, and then anytime something happens like that around like a church lady, they're like, you're a Jezebel.
Yup.
and they love to invoke this poor girl. This poor girl.
Who was just fucking being a queen.
She was just being a queen. She just wanted to put it in fucking driveway. All
She was
right.
just like letting women talk.
Yeah. She was just letting women talk and like not making them wear a sheet as a costume.
Dumb.
Which
Fuck
I'm
the
I'm
patriarchy.
really like not judging people like religions who do that. I think if you're a woman and you feel empowered to do so, like wearing a burqa, sure. But I'm also
Yeah.
like, but also there's this thing that I do not agree with, where like if it's as a culture, like you're saying that women have to dress like that.
No, no. I mean, yeah, it's like veiling is a very old historical practice, but I don't agree with anyone being forced to adhere to a practice like yeah, because it's like a woman just being like barehead out in public is not responsible for shitty dudes.
No, it's not, and it's really like just incredible to me that that was a thing 3,000 years ago, and my God, if it isn't still a fucking thing, you know?
I do love this idea though of like invoking the spirit of Jezebel and you're like hexing the patriarchy magic.
Oh, I really though, because I was like, to me, it goes together. I feel like, again, it's kind of one of those things where I feel like these stories are important in the context of working with your ancestors because these are the stories that they knew, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, it's like the entire half of my family that was Pennsylvania Dutch. Like Pennsylvania Dutch witchcraft practices are like very Christian based.
Yeah. So all of that to say, I personally I think Jezebel has gotten an incredibly bad rap here because
For
there's
no
there's
reason.
absolutely there's absolutely no mention of her being a prostitute at the temple when she was still in Phoenicia. And she put on some fucking eyeshadow. Now, here's the thing. She put on some fucking eyeshadow. Uh what they interpreted that as is that she's trying to seduce Jehu, who's on this holy crusade to rid the Holy Land of this paganism, right?
Not everything's about your dick, Jehu.
Right, right,
Ugh.
right, right, right. But so I kind of see it as like, she's doing this very stoic thing where she's like, I'm going to like die. Like, I lived as this beautiful queen and I'm going to die as this beautiful queen. Um,
And then they slut shamed her for existing in a like feminine body.
because she knew, okay, so they throw her out the window and she's torn apart by dogs, which is so undignified.
Yeah. The least they could do is let her fucking turn a look on her way out.
Exactly. It like literally exactly. It's like they already killed her in such an undignified way that I think she was just trying to like have some dignity in death. Like she was like, I want to look good, like before they throw me out the window. Like
Yeah.
she was aware of the prophecy.
Yeah. Ugh. Wow.
So anywho, and it's like the patriarchy just like could not.
They just can't with a strong, independent lady.
And I just do think it's funny that there was like a little bit of this is Ahab's fault because he's letting her.
And it's
But
like, no, it
also
sounds like Ahab might be the only good husband in the Bible.
but also like they were so pissed at her for just existing
Yeah.
as like a lady with opinions.
Yeah.
So all of that to say, yeah, I feel like invoking Jezebel against the patriarchy feels very timely. And I feel
Yeah.
like
It's like invoke Jezebel, do a glamour makeup look, beat your
yes,
face in her honor.
beat your face in her honor. I'm so excited about the Taroscope this week.
Because it's for you, Nicholas. Okay, well, of course, I drew Aries. Look at the kitty cat for the Tarot scope. Fire element, Mars. The stones, diamond and bloodstone.
Oh yeah.
I also love the flowers, honeysuckle and thistle. Feels so right. But I really felt drawn to use my macabre tarot deck today, which again, just reminder, this case is everything.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's the creek. It's the creek.
It's the creek. But I've drawn for you the star, which is represented by Medusa. Speaking
Another
of like
another feminist icon, Medusa.
truly. So I love getting the star card for you, Nick, because in the story of the major arcana, the star immediately follows the tower. So this can symbolize like a period of prosperity following tumult. So this is like you're entering this like peaceful, loving period of your life. Magic, divinity is flowing around you. But this is also an important reminder to like take care of yourself, right? And here's like a PSA. Self-care is really important, but it's not just mud masks. Like sometimes it's like going to get that dental cleaning you've been putting off. It's going to the doctor. It's like taking out the trash. It's like it can be beautiful and fun, but it can also be like taking care of the shit that hangs over your head. And to me, Aries, that's what this star is most representing. It's like you're entering this beautiful phase, but you have to still remember to take care of yourself, because like if your vessel is out of whack, like if it's out of sync, you're not going to be able to really fully connect to the magic and the divinity that's flowing around you. So it's like this is such a good opportunity, but also don't forget to do the unsexy self-care stuff that allows you to really focus on enjoying the beauty.
Love that. And yeah, I'm like really actually very tuned into this energy in this month, like leading up to my trip, where I'm like, I actually not only do I have to like be taking care of myself because while I am traveling, I'm probably going to be going a little harder than I usually do. But also I'm just like I've been feeling a little depleted. So yeah, I did clean my room the other day, which felt so good.
Oh, yes.
Um and when you like clean your room and then you light a candle and you're like it's luscious.
Yeah, you're like, this candle has never smelled better. I mean, it's like literally the room isn't clean until you light a candle.
No. That's how you know you're done though. That's how you know you're done cleaning the room.
Yeah, hundo P. But yeah, I was so excited to get it. And I do love the star in this macabre tarot deck because it's also like an overflowing cup of a skull. So
Love.
it's
I do love that it's Medusa.
and it's Medusa. Speaking of beating your face in honor of Jezebel, like look at
Yes.
her makeup look here is fantastic.
She's giving.
Anyway,
She's giving us everything.
she is. Well, I think that's all she wrote.
Yeah. So to all of you demonic painted whores of Babylon.
Oh, to you demonic painted whores, blessed be, bitches.
Blessed be bitches.
Goodbye.